Welcome to Mythos AI, your source for Cliff's Notes on complex subjects. Join Anna and Phil for yet another engaging conversation.
Welcome back. We're diving into a really important topic today, AI regulation.
Yeah, it's urgent. We're looking at this new report from Anthropic.
Right. The case for targeted regulation came out just a few days ago, on Halloween, actually, October 31st.
And, Anthropic's a major player in AI development.
Exactly. So when they say regulation is needed, it's a pretty big deal.
Absolutely. And they make a strong case, starting with how fast AI is advancing.
Faster than anyone expected, it seems.
Yeah, like even people in the field are surprised. And they point to some specific areas where the progress has been, well, kind of mind-blowing.
Math, for example. AI solving complex math problems.
Yeah.
That's not new.
True, but the level they're at now, it's like graduate level reasoning. That's new.
And coding. I was reading about these SWE bench results.
Yeah, that's a benchmark for how well AI can do real-world coding tasks. The progress there is just shocking.
It is. Just to give you an idea, in October of last year, Claude 2, one of Anthropic's earlier models, it had a 1.96% success rate on the SWE bench.
Pretty low, right. But then, just a few months later, by March this year, Devin, another AI model, was up to 13.5%.
A huge jump. But then, get this, last month, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, the latest version, hit 49%.
Almost half of the coding problems solved correctly by AI.
That's insane. Imagine what that means for the future of, well, everything.
Right, and that's where the concern comes in. Because this amazing potential, it comes with risks. Big risks.
And Anthropic focuses on two areas in particular. Cybersecurity.
Where AI could be used to launch these super sophisticated cyber attacks, attacking power grids, financial systems, anything really.
Causing chaos. Disrupting, well, life as we know it.
Exactly. But then there's the even scarier potential, bioweapons development.
AI designing dangerous biological agents.
Right. Anthropic's shown that their AI can answer complex scientific questions about biology and chemistry just as well as like a PhD expert would.
So taking that knowledge and using it to create new, more potent, harder to detect bioweapons, that's a terrifying thought.
And it's not science fiction anymore. What Anthropic predicted a year ago, as risks 2-3 years out, they're saying now it's much closer than that.
Which is why this whole conversation about regulation is so urgent. We need to figure out how to manage these risks, and fast.
So they're not just sitting around worrying about this. Anthropic's actually taking steps to address these risks head on.
Right, with what they call their responsible scaling policy. RSP for short.
Yeah, their RSP, and it's been in place for a while now, since September 2023.
Which shows they were thinking about this early on. But what exactly does this RSP entail?
Well, it's basically a framework, a set of guidelines for developing AI safely and responsibly. And it rests on two main principles: proportionality and iteration.
Proportionality. I'm guessing that means the safety measures are proportional to the AI's capabilities.
Exactly. The more powerful the AI, the stronger the safeguards. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't put the same lock on a garden shed as you would on a bank vault.
Perfect analogy. And then there's iteration.
Meaning they're constantly evaluating and adjusting the policy.
Right. It's not set in stone. AI is evolving so fast, any effective approach has to be flexible, able to adapt.
So how does this RSP actually play out within Anthropic? Does it affect their day-to-day operations?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest impacts has been the growth of their safety and security teams. They've really ramped up the resources dedicated to risk assessment.
So more people whose job is to think about what could go wrong, basically.
Exactly. And then to come up with ways to prevent those things from happening, it's a lot of in-depth analysis, developing safeguards, constantly monitoring the AI systems for any signs of, unexpected behavior.
And this whole idea of threat modeling, I was reading about that.
Yeah. So they create these detailed scenarios, these what-if situations of how their AI could potentially be misused.
So what if someone tries to use our AI to design a bioweapon?
Exactly. And then they figure out, okay, how do we prevent that specific scenario from happening? What technical safeguards do we need? What procedures? What kind of training for our staff?
And those threat models, they probably change pretty frequently, right? As the AI gets more sophisticated.
All the time. It's a constant process of updating and refining, making sure their safeguards are keeping pace with the AI's capabilities.
And they're pretty open about all of this too, aren't they?
Yeah.
In terms of transparency.
Oh, yeah. They're committed to being transparent about their safety measures, their risk mitigation efforts, everything. They publish a lot of this information publicly.
Which makes sense. For building public trust, you need to be open about what you're doing, how you're approaching these risks.
Right. And it also allows for external scrutiny. Other experts can look at what they're doing, offer feedback, point out potential blind spots. It makes the whole process more robust.
And this RSP, it aligns with those larger initiatives too, right? Like the White House voluntary AI commitments.
Absolutely. And the Bletchley Park AI Safety Summit, all these international efforts to establish best practices for AI development, Anthropic's right there, actively involved.
So they're walking the walk, so to speak. Not just talking about safety, but actually implementing it in a very concrete way.
Yeah. But they're also very clear that this internal effort, while important, it's not enough. They're calling for actual government regulation.
Because voluntary measures can only go so far.
Right. You need a level playing field. You need to make sure that every company developing advanced AI is held to the same high standards.
Otherwise, the bad actors, the ones cutting corners on safety, they could undermine the whole effort.
Exactly. And that's where regulation comes in. So how do we get from good intentions and company policies to actual enforceable regulations?
That's the million-dollar question. But Anthropic does offer some concrete ideas.
Right. And, it all starts with that transparency we were talking about, but they take it a step further. It's not just about disclosing that you have an RSP.
It's about making those RSPs truly public.
Yeah, and detailed. So that anyone, not just experts, can understand what safeguards are in place and how they work.
And how they're tied to specific AI capabilities, right?
Exactly. Imagine a company develops an AI that can write complex code. Their RSP would have to spell out exactly what security measures kick in when that AI hits certain levels of proficiency.
So we can all see, okay, at this level, these safeguards are in place. At a higher level, these additional safeguards come into play.
Right. No more hiding behind vague statements about safety being a top priority.
It's got to be clear, specific, and out in the open.
And that's just the start. They also want companies to publish risk evaluations for every new AI system they develop.
So basically a public record of, here are the potential dangers we've identified, and here's how we're addressing them.
Exactly. It'd be like a shared knowledge base for the whole AI industry.
Companies could learn from each other's experiences, spot common challenges,
And hopefully come up with better solutions faster.
so more collaboration, more shared learning, which ultimately leads to better safety for everyone.
Right. But transparency alone isn't enough. You need those incentives too. Ways to encourage companies to actually build really strong RSPs.
And to go above and beyond the bare minimum, right?
Exactly. So Anthropic suggests a few things, regulators could actually get involved in shaping those RSPs.
So not just leaving it up to the companies to decide what's safe enough.
Right. Regulators could say, okay, every RSP needs to address this specific threat model. For example, mitigating the risk of AI being used to develop bioweapons.
That would ensure every company is at least thinking about those high-impact risks.
Exactly. Or they could set industry-wide standards, like minimum requirements for safety testing or the composition of those security teams.
Similar to what we have in other industries, like construction safety regulations or food safety standards.
Right. It creates a baseline, helps ensure a consistent level of safety across the board.
And maybe even encourages a bit of healthy competition.
Yeah, like a race to the top for AI safety.
Where companies are striving to have the most robust RSP, the best safety record.
And maybe there are rewards for that. Public recognition, regulatory advantages.
Even financial incentives. Make it worthwhile for companies to invest in safety.
Make safety a selling point,
Exactly. But all this talk about standards and regulations, it can't be too rigid, right?
That's a key point Anthropic makes. The rules have to be flexible, able to adapt to the rapid pace of AI development.
Because what's cutting edge today might be obsolete tomorrow.
Right. So they suggest giving regulatory bodies the power to, issue guidance, clarify things, update the rules as needed.
Keep things dynamic, basically.
Exactly. And, this whole framework, it can't be overly complicated either.
Yeah, because if it's too burdensome, it could backfire. Companies might find loopholes and just give up altogether.
Right. It's got to be focused, targeted,
Right.
addressing the most serious risks without creating unnecessary obstacles.
So what's the best way to achieve all of this? Federal regulation. State level.
Anthropic seems to think federal regulation is the ideal scenario. It offers the most uniformity, the most access to expertise.
And you're drawing on the resources of the entire federal government.
Right. Exactly. But they acknowledge that federal legislation can be slow. And this issue is, pretty urgent.
So in the meantime, state-level regulations might be a good stopgap, like what California is already doing.
Right, and those state-level efforts could even inform future federal regulations, kind of like a testing ground.
But it's not just a U.S. issue, right? This is global.
Absolutely. Anthropic stresses the need for international collaboration. Because if every country has wildly different regulations.
It creates weaknesses, opportunities for bad actors to exploit.
Exactly. So yeah, there's a lot to think about here. But ultimately, Anthropic's report is a call to action, a plea to policymakers, industry leaders, everyone really.
To take this seriously, to recognize the risks, but also the incredible potential of AI.
And to work together now to shape a future where AI benefits all of humanity, safely and responsibly.
That's the goal. And that's a good place to leave it for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to Mythos AI. Stay tuned for more concise insights. And remember to hit the like button and subscribe for future episodes.